Hi, everybody. Elaine, Lynn, you guys are so cool. I expect to have quite a few lurkers today. I am sitting in my caustic studio, and straight over that way is the closet and the, what am I trying to say? Mixed media. Right here is my big floor-to-ceiling easel, and behind me is oil tabaret and big computer. And I'm kind of sitting tucked in this corner, so I like to have the encaustic here. So, where have I been? I said 3 o'clock. Hey, Gail. Yep, feeding chickens. Or was that what somebody asked? You've been feeding chickens. Woo. So, are y'all excited? Hey, Nancy. You just lurk all you want to. I should say, for all of you who are watching this on a rerun, welcome, welcome. And we give everybody a few minutes to get into the live session. So we chit chat a little bit, and feel free to fast forward and catch the bits that you want. And we'll be getting started here in just a few minutes. We'll wait just a few more minutes. Every time I started getting something out, I kept thinking of something else I wanted to show you. And then I got my computer all set up and realized that I had a operating system upgrade overnight. And somehow or another in my Chrome, I got an ad pop up. I hate those things. I don't get them on Safari, just on Chrome. So if I have that issue, just hang with me. So far, StreamYard's been consistent. I haven't had it mess up on me. Thought I felt the hole in my shirt, but I don't. Oh, yesterday, I forgot to tell y'all. Last week I made some show what? Oh, that's Nancy. Okay. Boiled some avocado skins and pits, and I didn't have very many, so we boiled it down, and then it didn't have much color in it at all, and then we let it evaporate a little bit, and the color came out. So I didn't have much. I had, maybe that much, but it was enough for 40, 50 sheets of paper. So they're outside drying right now, and I'm excited about those. How many of y'all have ever tried encaustic before? I couldn't figure out what that was. That's my gold umbrella for lighting. Have you watched any encaustic type work? Have you seen any in life? I need Lynn over here to buff. She is a buffer now. Oh, here, I've got something right here. Okay, how much delay? 1. Oops, I don't have my YouTube up. Tell me when you see my hand. Well, that won't work. I'll go over here on iPad to YouTube. That'll work. Do 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 do. Pop pop. There it is right there. Man, I love StreamYard. It just puts stuff right on up there. Aha. You know what? My StreamYard text isn't keeping up. Okay, let me catch up with you guys. Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a 6-second delay. Now that helps me know that if I ask you a question, I'm not going to get an immediate answer. So I don't remember what first triggered me on encaustic, but I think it was about 10 years ago when I read something about the Egyptian Fayum mummies, the portraits. And it really piqued my interest. And I kept saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I just took up a while. No. Yep. Went to a thrift store and they had a little, I can't get it out. I'll get it out after a while. A little hors d'oeuvre thing. And it had the domed lid. I mean, straight out of the 60s. And it was like shiny. It was like aluminum color. I don't know what it was, but it was like aluminum. And that was my very first little griddle. I was scared in the beginning. Quite honestly, it just sounded exotic and beyond my reach. But I thought I could try that little thing. And my very first encaustic medium tins were these little 1-inch things that came out of a makeup type kit or something at the thrift store. Because I was just going to do little bitties until I figured out what I was doing. And now then I graduated to this. You can buy a tin just like this at, I'm not going to get into materials yet, but at Dollar Tree. And it's got a lid. You don't need the lid. And then I graduated to this. Encaustics are one of the oldest art mediums in the world. Probably about the time of the cave paintings in France, which is attributed to soft pastel because they use the rocks to get the pigment off, or drawing with the charcoal. The Vikings, the ancient Vikings, used encaustic, one of the first records of it, to seal the wood planks on their boats so they'd go to sea. And then the other thing they did was that they colored the wax and painted scary figures and demons and gods and stuff like that on their boats, which was to scare away their opposition armies that would come to them. It would scare them half to death. And then about that time, I told you some of this stuff the other day, but about that time, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, started using it. And they were traveling artists who would go from town to town, and the wealthy people would hire these artists to paint their portrait on a thin piece of wood that could be shaped just a little bit. And they did it in encaustic because oil hadn't been used yet. And of course, acrylic hadn't. That was a 1950s invention. But anyway, when they died, this was put over their face in their mummy so that this face was there. And the custom was to paint them with great big eyes so that it would scare off the demons and, the warthogs and the thieves and all that kind of thing. And the story goes that the custom was to stand your deceased mother and dad in their mummies up in the corner of your house, and they lived there forever until some enterprising young wife said, I'm tired of those damn things. They're going out of here. So they threw them out into the desert, and that's where they remained until, I think it was early 1900s. Don't correct me. I mean, look it up, but it's recent, fairly recent. And what they found was that those faces, those on the wood panels, were perfectly intact. They had not deteriorated at all. So they'd been buried in the hot sand. I'm sure that it wasn't that hot or they would have melted, but maybe far enough down that it was cooler. But that's when encaustic got a reputation for being extremely archival. And then a little bit later, they did it on the plaster walls. If you've ever been to or even seen pictures of Pompeii, the murals and things like that, in the earlier time than Pompeii, they did it with encaustic on the wet plaster. And that involved getting up with some sort of what they called a brazier. And I'm thinking it was some kind of a little charcoal pot that they could hold and melt their wax and apply it to the wall. Because the minute you take the wax off the heat, it dries. So there's that. That's a good thing. So that's where caustic came from. The 1940s, 1950s, some artists in New York, some experimental artists, started reviving it because it had pretty well been dead. And they experimented with all kinds of formulas and materials, and more than a few of them risked their life with the toxicity and the flammable content. About 1990 or so was when we got our first retail product. So now we can buy the colored sticks, and we can buy just about anything we want. I make mine because storage is an issue. For those of you who have a lot of acrylic paints, I liken it to just take a brand like Folk Art or Apple Barrel, and there's a color of green for every holiday that you might want. Well, you start looking for that particular green, you're going to be there a while. The same thing with the encaustic sticks. Quick. This is one company's way of packaging. So you might have 30 or 40 of these, and then you're going to be digging around a while. So, all right, I'm going to switch over. You don't get to see me anymore. Bye. Oh, one other thing I was going to tell you before we click off. I will always be truthful with you guys. If I don't know something, I will tell you that I don't know something. I always tell my students, please do your own research. Don't take what somebody that you met in a workshop said, or they heard it somewhere, or because there's a lot of false information going around about every medium. Do your own research. Wikipedia always has good technical stuff like the chemistry and the history and things like that. But do your own research so you'll know for yourself. I'm seeing, and that's part of why I like the mixed media groups, is the interest that has been shown in fine art medium, and encaustic is one of them. The issue that I've seen is that with mixed media, you're dealing with Elmer's glue or acrylics or colors that are mostly dyes, things that are almost childproof. Your more expensive acrylics, but in general, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about toxicity or flammability or any of that thing. When you start moving into professional artist mediums, it changes. And that's where discrepancies come in. Like, oh, I don't want to paint oil because it's so toxic. Well, that's not true. The only thing in a tube of oil is the ground pigment and a kitchen oil. Safflower, linseed, not olive because but anyway, get my drift. It's just an oil, a plain old oil squeezed from a nut or a tree. They may add extenders. One company that I buy from for my encaustic has a little bit of beeswax in it. So a few little additives like that, but nothing toxic. Now, when you get into pigments, the pigment powders, if somebody gave you you were just starting in oil paint and somebody handed you a tube of white oil paint, said, here, you can have this. It's great. So you go home and you're from the mixed media world, and so you've been doing finger painting with acrylic. So you don't know any different except what this person may or may not have told you. So you go in with this white paint and you finger paint. Well, you may find out later that that's got lead in it. Highly, highly dangerous. Artists used to use it all the time, but we've got many, many more replacements for lead white. So you've got to know what you're dealing with. And then when you find out what you're dealing with, you treat it differently. But it all begins with an awareness. Okay? Certain pigments are toxic, like cadmiums. There are now several companies, Gamblin's one of them, that has developed a cadmium-free color. Are they as intense and have all the properties of a real cadmium? No. The only time you're going to be in danger of it is if you eat in your studio, get paint on your sandwich, and then take a bite of the sandwich. Eat it. Nobody's going to do that. But again, that's why oils are not suitable for children. Encaustic is the same way. People say, oh, it's toxic. Oh, I had to build my studio with a huge ventilation system. If you were a professional artist who only worked with encaustic and you had 5 or 6 iron griddles with containers this big holding 2 quarts of encaustic hot all the time, yes, you might need to worry about it. Beeswax is 100% natural. There's nothing toxic at all about beeswax. Maybe unless, you know, the insecticides and stuff, but very, very little. Damar resin is the other ingredient, and it's just those 2 ingredients, period. Damar resin comes from a tree. Have you ever been out at the pine tree or something like that and gotten the sap on your fingers? You cannot get it off. That's a version of what this is. And what it does when added to the beeswax is it makes the beeswax cure a little bit harder. Is it toxic? Absolutely not. And you can read that for yourself, and you'll find a whole lot more that say it is than it isn't. The only time it's toxic is if you heat it above 200 degrees. So remember, 200 degrees Fahrenheit is your magic number. It won't really start smoking until 250. And then it'll start smoking, and I guess there could be some toxicity in that. And the other thing that's even more important is, hey, Nikki, is the flammability, because oils that you cook with are flammable, okay? So easy peasy, you know. There is another, well, back up. On regular encaustic, there are other waxes that some people use, like carnauba. Carnauba is the only one I can come up with right at hand. I think there's a synthetic, but those are used by people who have different, they're on different paths with it. Some of those dry harder, so therefore they're more prone to cracking. There are soy waxes, and that is used by some folks, that you can put it on your griddle and clean it. You can put it in a pot, clean your brush with it. You don't paint with it. I've tried that before, and it was a pita. So I just dedicate a cheap brush to each color, and I don't worry about cleaning. There's encaustic collage. That's what it's called. It's not encaustic. It's beeswax collage. So be aware of that. Usually people will tell you if they know what it is, and that's perfectly valid. I mean, you know, you can wax paper all day long with just straight beeswax. It's fun. It has a place. There's another medium called cold wax. There are 2 companies at this point that I know of that make it. One is Dorland's cold wax medium. Well, where did you go? It must have fallen in the floor. Okay. No, it didn't. Here it is. Oops. This is Dorland's cold wax medium. This is not encaustic. This was developed for oil painters as a medium to make their oil paint harden more like an encaustic, or to have a shine, or a what's called oh crap, you know, where it sticks up. Gamblin also makes a cold wax medium. Anytime you go with a product like this, find the MSDS, that's the Material Specification Data Sheet. And that will tell you what the inert and flammabilities and all those types of things that you really need to know for yourself. This is 50% solvent, 40 to 50% solvent, and it stinks to high heaven. It smells like turpentine, and I'm sure it's got Gamsol in it, but it smells like turpentine. It's a solvent. Solvents are highly flammable. Solvents are highly toxic. So beware of that if you use it. Both have a melting point of about 156-ish degrees Fahrenheit. You're working with beeswax at 200. What does that tell you? It's not a good idea to heat cold wax. You can't smoke around it. No smoking. That is when I see that happen, and I see a mixed media artist beginning to use something like that that can be very dangerous, I'm going to say something. If it makes you mad, I don't care. I'd rather have you safe than me come back later and say, well, I knew she was going to burn her eyebrows off, but I didn't say anything. Okay? So, other than that, I'll be truthful with you. If I know, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll tell you I don't. All right? Any questions? I'm going to take this off me now and check on the chat. Ooh. Okay. It means, Gail asked how they came up with the name encaustic. It's Greek for to burn in. And that's what you're doing with this wax, is you're burning it in. You have to have heat to make this work. I'm glad to hear, Nikki. You can always catch us later. Hey, Danny. Cool. Hey, Rosemary. Rosemary has an online class on encaustic, and has a kit. I'll show you what I made, because I'll go to Rosemary's. I don't care what she's teaching. And we did encaustic collage. And we started with a napkin, and we added a few three-dimensional things. Rosemary's kit includes a candle warmer. We're going to go over that here in just a minute. Rosemary, the class is $70-$75 and includes the kit with all the materials. And it includes a tin this size of the encaustic medium. So that's what I did there. Let's look at some more historical stuff. This is just, we're not going to paint today, so this is just this is my Pinterest board. So you're welcome to follow that board. Encaustic can be touchable. It can have texture. It can be totally smooth. It can be three-dimensional, which this intrigues me so much, but I do not have any room for anything three-dimensional. I don't know what that is. Oh, they're making rust there. There's all kinds of mixed media looking applications. There are all kinds of mixed media. That's mixed media. That's with rust. I've got some things in here that aren't. This is kind of like a sampler. There is image transfer from magazines. Simple, easy to do. It's straight out of the mixed media playbook. You can lay string in it and glue it down just like you would in collage. You can put tea bags, or the labels. You can put anything you want to put in it. I mean, I've seen people embed clocks where they cut through the board that the encaustic is on, insert a watch face, and they have the works behind it, and it fit in with their particular theme. Let's see, what else have I seen? Oh, crazy stuff. I've seen people paint on big ones that were 8 by 10 feet, and they would use a soup pot melted full of encaustic medium to pour on it. So anything goes with encaustic. It's extremely flexible as far as technique, extremely durable. It will not melt in your house. If it does, get the hell out of your house because your house is on fire. It has to be up to about 250 degrees to start getting kind of sticky. You don't leave it in a hot car, and artists who do this don't ship in the summer months unless they have assurance that it's an air-conditioned vehicle. So you don't leave any kind of art in a very hot car, but this definitely you don't. And it lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years. We know that. Okay, let me go back up. I didn't. What? Never mind. I've been screen shared. Crap. I did it wrong. I did it wrong. Here. Like I said, I get excited. Let me start over. Okay, here we go. You lay stuff on top of it, just like you do on a jelly plate. You rub it in, make an actual texture. You pull this looks like webbing of some sort. You pull that off and you've left indentions in the wax. You come back and fill it in with something else. Real similar to what we do with, here's the three-dimensional thing I was telling you about. I'm sorry, I try to be Johnny on the side. And I goof, so. What do you get for free? You can use mark making tools just like you do in jelly plating, except maybe instead of rubber bands on a brayer that you roll on a jelly plate, here you would take wire and make marks. Down here, that's a close-up of something. You get all kinds of looks like some people get with alcohol ink. In fact, I know an artist in Texas who uses alcohol ink with her encaustics. And a caution there is that inks are not permanent or archival because they do fade. But, you know, who knows how long that's going to take. So, again, as long as you know what you're doing, you're fine. And then you can make your decision with the correct results. And that would be like a collage with different kinds of paper. I don't wear gloves that, you know, they get in the way more than anything else. Here's one that uses either India ink or Sumi ink. I think the only medium that is not compatible with encaustic is acrylic. Because acrylic is plastic and encaustic needs an absorbent surface to adhere to the surface below it. So acrylic would impede that. So any layers on top of the acrylic paint that you put on it would be prone to cracking and falling off. There's one in particular I want to get down here. I showed y'all one the other day. That's what this looks like. Nope, that's rust. I haven't done much with rust. And see, this is simple, and they've taken dried flowers to put and encase in the wax. In my house, that would break all to pieces unless the whole thing was built up. The more layers of wax you put on it, the more indistinct your background gets. Here's a current day portrait artist for encaustic. And with that, you use colored wax. I do quite a bit of that. Transfer papers. All kinds of three-dimensional things like this that are kind of like museum quality, where there are holes in papers, and then you stack papers behind each other to get a certain look. Stuff like this. So multitudes of possibilities. Here you would take a doily or something and smush it into a warm wax, get the pattern, pull the doily up, and fill all those lines with white or whatever color. Here it is with a stencil. You can use all of your stencils with encaustic. You can use pen pastels are perfect. They work great. Three-dimensional. I don't like the way this pops up and turns dark all the time. There are all kinds of tools and brushes and any amount of money that you want to spend. There's a way to do calligraphy on encaustic. So I feel like I've just barely scratched the surface on encaustic. I still want to see if I can find that one. Here's a pretty little sampler like that. The one I'm looking for, he poured 10, 12, 15 layers of, here's an encaustic set up on a griddle. Let's just back up on that. They're using what I told you in the list yesterday. Come on, I don't want that. Dog food or tuna cans for the colors that they don't use very often. They use a lot of white, so they've got a lot of white ready. And this is their clear medium. I use, or artists use shellac, and you put the shellac on top of an encaustic at any level. Here's encaustic and alcohol. It's you put the shellac on top of an encaustic. You're outside, so you take it and light it with a torch or a match or something like that, and it will instantly burn just like alcohol does when you order bananas Foster in a restaurant. And it burns off, and the encaustic melts along with the fire. Anyway, this is what I'm looking for. He did many layers of different colors on top of each other. And then he came back in with a knife tool. Here, it's kind of like this. This is probably the guy. Stop. Okay, we flipped over to somebody else's page. I don't usually use Pinterest on my Carl Kaiser, K-A-I-S-E-R. Many different layers of encaustic, and then he took a razor blade tool or something that was sharp and carved real thin pieces like you do if you're doing soap art or something like that and you're carving into a bar of soap, and all those different colors, and then he can mold that on his painting to resemble trees or land or whatever. So that's all I'm going to show you there. Okay, this goes into a craft application. This is on my YouTube channel. These are papers that I would use for jelly printing. And I've just laid them on my griddle and got wax on them. This was an early video, by the way, so I think I'm holding it by my hand. And I used these pieces, these exact pieces, to sew together for pages in the book. Come on. Just want to show you a few pages, and you can look this up on your own. So here is a very valid mixed media usage of the beeswax, and the book smells wonderful. Use any kind of papers you want. Okay, I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to come back to our camera. All right. Come back over here. Hi, Debbie. Yeah, Debbie, she kept saying that it was not encaustic. It was beeswax. So, anyway, I talked about that quite a bit at the beginning. Okay. Danny, I normally stream at 4 o'clock Central on Tuesday and Thursday, but lately I've been coming on impromptu, usually around this time, 3 or 4 o'clock. Randy's got the vacuum cleaner going. Okay, I'm looking at chat. What did I show y'all a while ago that was beeswax collage? Well, anyway, that's what I showed you this from Rosemary's. The difference in encaustic is it's harder. Real encaustic is 8 parts beeswax, 1 part Damar resin, and they're melted together. You don't coat the top of it with Damar resin. And if we have time today, I'll show you what it looks like when it's melted. But this is real encaustic. Now, the encaustic, and as long as it's curing, or maybe it's been a year or two, something like that, you buff it and get a shine. Lynn was here last week and just had a big old time buffing on this. This is collage. This is magazine transfer. These are threads and embedded. So you see how shiny that is? When we picked it up, it had been sitting on my shelf since it was done, and a little buffing and it pops right on out. Some people don't like it buffed up. So anyway, there is a difference. Okie dokie. So we saw these. These are done by just putting color down like you would on a jelly plate, and you put it down on your griddle and run your same tools through it, same processes, and lay a piece of paper down in it. This is a rice paper, I believe, and it bends and folds because it's a thin coat. Sometimes the back sides are better than the front sides. All right, any questions? I was moving some stuff, so that's probably why. Shouldn't be. Come on, damn it. Perfectly clear on StreamYard. I'm going to reload that on my YouTube. Look at that. Okay, hang on, don't go anywhere. Still blurry. I quit YouTube and came back in. It's a YouTube issue. Because StreamYard is totally online. I don't know either. It's got to be internet speed. Sunday afternoons, it's always bad. I think that's because everybody and their dog is catching up. Thank you, Rosemary, for saying what you did. Just because somebody calls it encaustic does not mean it's encaustic. And I already talked about the Dorland's cold wax medium. I used capital letters in a chat the other night because somebody was talking about smoking cigarettes, heating it to 200 degrees and using it as an experiment, and they very well could have blown their head off. So when it gets serious and when it gets dangerous, I will get your attention. You've got to know for yourself what's in it. All right. My pancake griddle has a hole where a grease tray used to lay, and I'm kind of separated from it now. So I put one of these cans under it, and I save the wax that comes out of those. And it kind of looks like this. But I save all of these pieces because I made this entire painting with the dregs of what melted off the plate or off of the griddle. And this is a panel, and I filled the whole inside with that wax, and I put of course, depending on what you're working on, you're going to get different colors. So I layered, and then I carved a bas relief back into that wax. Here's one of my tins. All right, the typical encaustic. This is the art wise, not for mixed media projects. You seal your board with the encaustic medium. That's what it's called. It's a medium, and that's the 8 parts to 1. Some artists mix a different proportion, but that's for reasons. Most of your commercial mixes are 8 to 1. You seal your board by putting a layer of encaustic on it, and then you heat it with a heat gun until the board absorbs it. I haven't always done that. People don't always do it, but I get better results down the road when I do. Then you come back and you brush on another layer of encaustic. And the minute that you put it down, it's dry. So then you take your heat gun or a blowtorch, like a creme brulee blowtorch, and you run it across the surface just until it shines, and you're moving your hand. What that does is it melts and bonds the newest layer of wax to the next lower wax. So, and all of a sudden, instead of 2 layers of wax, you have 1. So you put wax on, you heat it, you let it cool, put wax on, you heat it. So everything that I've done in encaustic is that pattern. I use a heat gun and my little torch. This one I got at Harbor Freight. I think it was $5, $6, something like that. Let me put this up so we don't get discombobulated. A side note about the wax mediums, they are 40 to 50% solvent. Solvent equals turpentine or Gamsol mineral spirits. Okay, I'll put this back up. Let's talk about things to heat or melt your wax. I put this in your materials list, and I will link that in the YouTube video and descriptions for now. You can get it at my Twitter account, Vicki Lou 92. Okay. I put this here because it's a really handy tool. They have discontinued them, but if you're lucky, you can find one somewhere. I know Rosemary had one gifted to her. A lucky dog she is. This has a temperature gauge. And okay, back up. If you have one of these or can get a hold of one of these, it's great to mix for most mixed media projects. That's about all you'll need at a time. The little tins that I showed you, These don't hold very much, and you'll learn real quick that you need some. When you get finished with this little baby, you unplug it, and within minutes, it's hard as a rock, and you store it. No cleanup is necessary. Okay? Yep. I'm looking. Okay, blurry. All right. This is the item that our dear sweet Rosemary found and tested. This is a candle warmer. And she told me that they don't go above 200 degrees. So as I mentioned earlier, I looked at my own research last night because I was going to be telling you pretty much 200, 210 degrees. That is perfect for beeswax because that's a point where it's liquid enough to brush, but it's not liquid enough to smoke. There are times when I will go up a little bit on my temperature. I want to get a real smooth coat, and sometimes I do that. The other thing is I'm sitting here right now under a ceiling fan. You don't want that because it'll dry it faster than you can get it from the pot to the paper or the board. So anyway, that, and it holds one of the cans perfect. I don't know how expensive these are. I don't know, maybe $10 or so, 10 or under. Conceivably, you could have 3 or 4 of those. The other heating, get this out of the way. Let's see if I can do this. This is my gifted griddle, pancake griddle. Pam Belcher decided she needed a new griddle, so I got her old one. So I take, because I use more paint or more encaustic, I mix mine and keep them in these little things, and each color gets its own brush. Now, I will not do this again because it's harder to store. So I'll take the brush out when it's still wet, and I'll use a paper towel or something just to get the bulk of the encaustic off, and then these can be stored easier. Planed griddle. They do have a thermostat, so you can pretty well make sure that you're staying around 200 degrees. I couldn't find it. I don't think it's in this bag. No, it's in my cabinet here. I use a flat, it's called a grill thermometer, but it's flat. It has a flat back on it, just like this can. And you can get them on Amazon. I've got them in my store, on my Amazon store. You can buy them, you know, hardware stores or whatnot. This is another thing that you can put down on your griddle and watch the temperature. That's how important this is, to watch the temperature. Other than that, you're pretty much sky's the limit. Let's see. There are, I don't have one, haven't used one, but there are infrared things that you can click and it registers automatically, but I don't have one. So this plate is, and I fought getting this for the longest time, and it's stuck to the griddle, so I can't get it up. This is a sheet of anodized aluminum. If anybody knows where you can buy that local, let me know. This is used when you do monoprints like jelly prints. And in Causticos, the ENCAU, let me type that in for you. A-U-S. I'm not crazy about this keyboard on my new laptop. ENCAUSTICS. They're the only retail company I know that sells these, but I haven't been able to do good monoprints without it. So that's what this is. You don't need one unless you're going to, really make some good prints. Okay, tools. We're still on tools. Put this back. Put this back. This thing that I'm on right here is a warming tray. And it comes with a low, medium, and high setting, just a knob. And because it's a warming tray, they fluctuate. They'll go, I think it's about 20 degrees up or down, not up, but if you want it to be 200, it's going to fluctuate between 200 and 180. And sometimes you'll be using it and you'll see that your wax has a skin over it for drying. So this is definitely expendable. You don't really need it, but it has come in handy for me working on some of my bigger projects. Because it's flat and stable, I can leave this right here on this end of the table, and I can do collage or stenciling or whatever on top of it, because I don't have space to have 3 or 4 pancake griddles. Put that back. Okay, wood burning tool. Plain old wood burning tool. I noticed the other night that Beth had a real cool vintage one. The pin nibs were really sturdy. So these are used like for leather, for wood burning, and you get all these little doinky things with patterns on them. And I think that Walnut Hollow makes just about every one on the market. Little symbols and stuff. This is my fuse tool that I got from Faber-Castell. These are all identical. And all of the ones in the US are standard sizes. So all of the screw mounts, well, can't get it out now because it's, there it goes. Now, this is something else I observed the other night that you need to know. You cannot use this by itself. Because why? It's designed for wood burning. These get up to 300-400, maybe even higher than that in temperature. If you put this on straight, plugged in just like that, and put it on beeswax, you're going to go all the way down to your support, and you're going to smoke. So that's where this little gizmo comes in. This is called a temperature regulator. In caustic, the most important thing is you have to be able to control the heat. So you plug your tool into one end and you can monkey with it until you get, this is in percentages, usually around a 35 to 50% is good for what I want to use it for. So I've got 2 or 3 of these, and even the Clover one has a rheostat on it. That's this one. Has an on-off switch and a high, medium, and low. My print's coming off of there. But this really isn't any guarantee that it's going to be at 200 because you don't know what it's going to be. So I typically plug each of these kind of tools into a rheostat. I want you to look at the size of some of these attachments. Be careful with the Clover one because it is made in Britain and it comes in some places on Amazon with a continental plug. The size of this thing. See if you've got any questions. Yeah, these are sold in the sewing department or sewing supplies, like in quilting and stuff. If you just need to make just a little bitty, corner where it comes together, you don't want to carry it to the big ironing board. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Now, this is another one. This one has a fairly good, 1, 2, 3. You can pretty well guess at it. If you put it down on your encaustic to smooth it and it sinks all the way to the bottom, you've got it too hot. This also is something that's used in sewing, I believe. It may have some other uses. It's called a heat sealing iron. And I'm almost positive it's a quilting thing. There are I'm just going to show you these. You don't need them for what you're more than likely going to be doing. Sorry. Y'all know by now that I'm a gadget collector, or I am when I have money. These are reproductions of the original encaustic tools. And they have a name, and I have them in my phone. But this screws into a woodworking tool. And these are the, and I'm going to be curious what I do with my phone. There it is. I wrote the names down 10 years ago. Is the thing better? The focus better? Okay. This is called this Cautarium, which I'm sure is Greek for cauterize. And this is called the Centrum. I've never seen a video on how you're supposed to use these. I have messed with them and they're a little awkward. These come from R&F. Any questions so far? I'm looking around to see. I've got more toys and tools, of course. Oh, I've got this little baby. Got this at Joann's, also in the ironing department. It's a little 4-inch iron. It does well what the company in England, Encaustic, I think they spell it with a K. It's that green one. The advantage that green one has is that the handle pulls off and slides back in upside down so that this can be stationary. And you can use it to melt stuff on and brush it to your support. Again, be careful. Those come with a continental plug and a regular US plug. There is a site called Expert Village. Put that on here. And most of their videos are using an iron. So if you like that, then check that out. The iron art is totally different than painting with a brush. It's a different look. All right. Where are we? Let's do brushes. There is a metal brush on the market. And I have not purchased the Encausticos one because I think it's about $40 just for this attachment. But the cool thing about it is you can take your encaustic stick or whatever, and you can just take it like this. And because this is already hot, you take it to your board, it's hot, you apply your paint, and you're applying your encaustic and you're bonding it at the same time because of the heat. So that's cool for that. And the brushes are wider, which are really much more convenient. One of these days, Alice, one of these days. Brushes. I told you that chip brushes are awesome. They're cheap. I get mine on Amazon. I think I got 30 or 40 for, and I put that in the materials at the link. If you buy stuff from Amazon, if you buy it from my Amazon store, I get a little bit of credit, a couple pennies. This one's about had it. The little nails are getting loose. Now, see how hard that is? Once it comes off the griddle, it's hard. 5 minutes, store it. If you clean these, you still can't use them for anything but encaustic, but there's no point in cleaning them. Okay. Here's another chip brush. Hard as a brick bat. Here's what a new hockey brush looks like. I'm a brush fanatic. It's kind of like buying shoes when you're too fat to buy clothes. You know, if you can't buy anything else in art, buy a brush. So that's what this is. It's a goat hair, which is very, very soft. These are hog bristle, which is coarse. So you get different marks, just like you do with mixed media stuff. Here's one of the, I put this on the list too. This is the way these come, and they're put together with pegs, so you can take them apart if you want to. Sometimes I want a wide one. Again, it's hard. When I get ready to use it, I prop it up on the lid of my, on the handle of my palette like that, and it's ready to go in a few minutes. See if it catches up to me. Ooh, it's Sunday afternoon. I know that is what it is. Okay, it'll come up. So this is one of the single brushes from that. You can get these at Hobby Lobby for under $5 in the calligraphy and ink department. All right, now I'm going to blow another myth out of the water, so hang on to your britches. If you've done any reading about encaustic at all, you will read that you never use an artificial, a synthetic brush because it will melt. No, it won't. You may wear it out, but it's not gonna melt. Synthetic. People, you're only going to 200 degrees. You could put this brush in your oven at 200 degrees and it's not going to affect it. And typically what I do, these are low Cornell ones that are real soft, and I get them from my oil painting. One of my techniques requires a real soft brush. And when they get too worn down to use for oil, I just kick them over to the encaustic department. These have been hot on and off 100 times. The only one I've ever had, here's a rigger. The only one I've ever had kind of melt after a while was a real cheapy one, like Miriam's Nature had us buy. It's just those little individual plastic things with about 5 hairs in it. Those are the only ones I've ever, and they didn't melt for a long time. Okay? Use your good sense. And again, just because somebody said it on the internet doesn't make it so. See, you hear somebody say something on the internet and they tell somebody else they saw it on the internet, and it just keeps going like the phone game. phone game. And before long, you realize it was, oops, based on an assumption, and nobody ever checked it. So don't throw your old brushes away. You can give them new life. All right. Let's talk about medium. If you'll forgive me just a minute, I'll get down here in my bucket. Wrestle, wrestle. Don't guess I have any pre-made bullets. Okay. We has pellets. I mean, we don't have pellets. Okay, I'm pulling back up. This is beeswax that you buy from, this is from Swan's Candles. When I buy stuff like this, I look for the best price, and theirs has always been good. This is a real fine, what do they call it? It's like sand. And it's okay, but it gets all over things. I prefer pellets. They're like a grain of rice. So this is beeswax. I also use beeswax from Hobby Lobby if I'm in a pinch. This particular one is marked $15 with 40% off coupon for a pound. No telling what it is now. I like to have pre-mixed Damar resin, beeswax medium on hand, because you may get caught when you need it. This too is from Swan's. On 1 pound, it's already mixed for you. I recommend that you buy it already mixed. I recommend the pellets, and I recommend getting whatever price you can. If you get into a situation that you don't know, the ratio that you want is 8 to 1. That's 8 wax to 1 varnish. That's almost all of the commercial varieties. R&F last night I checked was about $25 for a pound. I recommended y'all get the 8-ounce bag from Encaustic Coast that's 14. So this is the soy wax, and it's used to clean brushes or clean your griddle if you have a reason to have a clean griddle. What I do? Put it up. Oh. This is the Damar resin. Your beeswax has a melting point of around 200 pounds, 200 degrees. Your Damar resin has a melting point of 250 to 275-ish. So if you know that, then it stands to reason that you can't melt them at the same time, because if you melt this at its rate with the beeswax, you're going to have a smoking mess on your hand. You do not use this raw. I heard that the other night. This is an ingredient in Damar varnish, which is used for oil paintings. I don't think it's used for anything else. I mean, I don't think that varnish is used for anything else. This is only one ingredient. I was going to melt some of this and show you how it does. We might, if y'all want to. It never gets liquid. It's tree sap. It gets like, have you ever made sugar creme brulee and made a caramel with sugar? That's kind of the texture it is. Now, things that you can buy. Already done. These little pieces are from R&F. And they are for, no, they're sold just like oil paint, in that the different pigments have a different rating as far as their expense. So usually a higher number is a more expensive pigment. So these all have different prices. They're not just a price, you know, standard price across the board. They come in big ones and small ones. And I mentioned when we started, get all the crust off of it. If you have a drawer full of 100 of these, you're increasing your problem tenfold trying to find the right color you want. So what I did in the beginning, I use a split complementary palette for my oil painting. And gradually, as I have learned it has extended over into my watercolor and everything else, because I can get 300 colors with 6. And it's a whole lot easier to have that. So I decided really early on, these can sometimes be $20 a stick, that I would make my own. And I was scared to death of it. Those strips are about 10 years old. I used them to make my round American flag. You want to see that? This was a themed show for don't laugh, Rosemary. This was a themed art show for the 4th of July. I cut little star shapes out of blue and then cut the same star shape in the ball and put it in like an applique. And it's not buffed. Lynn, got another job. Looks like a watermelon from that side. I had more fun making this. I don't care if it ever leaves this house or I ever make another one. I had a ball. Well, obviously. To put it on and scrape it where the brush marks are is one of the most enjoyable processes. And that with a heat gun and used with a heat gun is how you get it smooth. It's real dry, so it's crumbly. So there. You laughing yet? Bye, Nikki. Okay, where are we? I thought you saw it and laughed at it, Rosemary. You saw a picture of it. Okay. So these are some of the strips I had left over from making that. The first thing I made was clear. And I took the 8-to-1 thing to heart. Is Debbie still here? I mean, 8 to 1, I thought I was baking bread. I measured, I had a little postal scale and I measured because the Damar is in a chunk. I think you can buy it now in pellets, but it's in a chunk. And how do you measure a chunk with pellets, you know? So I measured as closely as I could by weight. Now I just take a measuring cup, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, and I'm done. So that's what I do. You have to melt the Damar resin separate, and so that it can be hotter. And when it starts to melt and get a little bit stringy, sticky like sugar, then you start adding your beeswax. And it takes about 2 or 3 hours to make your own. It's not that much cheaper. It's about 30% cheaper. These are poured into a mold. And in the old days, all you had a choice was an aluminum mini, what do you call it? Muffin pan. That's what these are. Harder than hell to get out. I've sat in the backyard before and hit them, beat them with a hammer on the backside trying to get these to pop out. So, should you decide to try that, get the silicone ones. They just pop right out. I have a silicone one that makes this crayon shape, which is pretty cool. So I told you about my split complementary. Say for example, this is my yellow. I've got a warm yellow and a cool yellow. And here's my warm red. And my cool red. Then I have a warm blue and a cool blue, and then I have clear. That's all I make for the most part. I told you I save all the scrapings. If I melt this in a pan, it's usable. Nothing at all wrong with it. You can tint it again. So it's an economical medium. I tried, oil paint. You can make your own colors with oil paint out of the tube. This is about the only time you'll hear me say this. You can use student grade oil. Student grade oil paint has more oil in it. So if you're going to use student grade paint, squeeze it out on a paper towel, let it sit overnight, and let some of that oil leach out. Oil and encaustic don't really mix too well. You can get by with a little. Look, excuse me. Oh. Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Oh, by the way, I sent you a Twitter message. Yeah, I mean, there are people who call it encaustic. They call lots of things encaustic, and it's not. Encaustic is beeswax and Damar varnish, period. Sometimes I'll do something like this. Okay, back on the oil. So then I'll take one of these little pucks and I'll melt it, and I'll just start adding some oil to it in its little can until I get the color I want. And you have to you kind of got to tell when you've got enough oil pigment in it so that it's not translucent on the ones that aren't supposed to be. Tried some powders like you would make for watercolor pans, and it was hard to use because the pigment is a granular pigment and it settles to the bottom of the wax. So I found myself having to stir and pour a whole lot more. It was harder to do. Yeah, it's like Kathy said, they're two different things. That's what Kathy kept saying the other night. It's like acrylic and watercolor. They're two different things. They're equally they're equal. It's just two different mediums, period. That's it. So, like I said again, I will tell you if you get ready to hurt yourself. When you make a foray, and I hope y'all help with people that you talk to, if you're making a foray from mixed media and crafting to fine art, please, please, please read the directions or read what's in these ingredients. I about had a kitten the other night with the Dorland's wax because they were talking about smoking cigarettes and heating it, and it's half solvent, and the flash point on that is very low. There are some things you play with and some things you don't. So that's all I got to say about that. All right, where are we? Colors. That's my color system. And with these 6 colors in white, I can make any color I want. Of course, I have some ready-mades. Now, crayons. I haven't used these yet. These have no Damar resin in them. Okay, so these are crayons. I haven't figured out how these are going to work to keep the colors separate. Probably an iron, but I'm not real sure because you don't want to cut this off and melt it. All the colors will move together. You can use crayons, and I would use Crayola because they're the best quality materials. You can use crayons for coloration in very small amounts. And nobody's going to guarantee the color fastness or light fastness of those when you mix them in your beeswax. Okay? Any more questions here? I just think these are super cool. Now, if you were going to do monoprinting with paper, then you lay this down on your hot surface, your griddle or this thing, and then just lay your paper on top of it, and you're going to keep the color variation. I think I got these round ones, I think, at Target. So there is your wax at this point for you guys, and for mixed media or doing that book that I did for Pam with the monoprint papers, I would buy it already made. You may not like it, and you may not need that much wax. The last commission I did in my portrait was 16 by 20, and I did use a little bit of wax, more than you would think. Embedding stuff, you can do, like I said, you can do magazine transfers where you lay the magazine on top of your warm wax. It's warm enough that it's solid, but it's still warm to touch. And you lay that on there and you rub it, same way you would any other mixed media image transfer. And the ink comes off. You do take water to rub to get the paper off the back. And that's what this is. And then once you get this transfer on there, you heat it very lightly. If you heat it too much, the ink from the paper will start to melt into your background pieces, into your background wax. And put a very light coat over on top of it, and then you're good to go. You can just keep adding and adding and adding. This is collage, different kinds of paper. The beauty of the real encaustic, authentic encaustic, is that you could put 5 to 6 different layers on each thing. If you want to coat a watercolor or watercolor paper or something like that for protection, you only need 1 coat. And you can use you can use cold wax medium for that, but the way you get it on there is with a palette knife or a brush. And then you rub it until it's smooth. Okay? No heat. And it stinks because it's got something that smells like turpentine in it for a solvent. So anyway, you can do 3-dimensional dots. Any kind of a pattern you can dream up, guys. This is done with embroidery thread. Lay it into a warm wax. Again, solid but not cold. Lay it in there, put some encaustic on top. Lay it in there, put some encaustic on top. And so that's why the more layers you do, the fainter your first layers get, because it's not a clear medium, it's a translucent medium. Okay? What have I forgotten that was on the list? Scraper, and I said clay scrapers work. I love them because they're small. Straight edge razors are great. This is just one of those little cheapy holders. Straight edge razor, and you do it like that. I've used X-Acto blades. And that's if you want a smooth finish. The holy grail of encaustic painting is a totally smooth finish. More like this. But there's nothing wrong with this. It just depends on your personal preference. No, let me entertain you. Let me find that picture and I'll show you. Hang on just a minute. Give me a, oh, well, there it is. Popped right up. Nope, nope, nope. Here. This is a commission I did. It'll come up here in a minute. This was a commission and they liked a chunky look. So that's why you see the chunky colors. And when I did this, it was on a panel. A panel board. Like these. And it had a 2-inch edge on it and then paint on this side. When I did my bas-relief, I did it from this side, filled this with wax and then carved into it. Oh, I was going to talk about surfaces. Surfaces. There are a million techniques, and a million different people have theories about what's best, but they're all based on an 8-to-1 formula. This is a little piece of plywood. I don't know if it's called, I'm not sure what it is. It's 1/4 inch or maybe 3/16. The wood industry is kind of, I can't get to my loo on. Maybe I can. This is MDF. I got these at Hobby Lobby. Whew, standing on my head. I bought these in a pack at Hobby Lobby. This is what they call Luan. It's kind of like paneling. Works great. Oh, I didn't move the camera. Let me show you. I won't show you that. Get back over here to where y'all are. Here we are. Okay. This is the 3/16. Looks like plywood to me. Unfinished. This is an MDF, which is a manufactured board. I got a sack of these at Hobby Lobby of all shapes and sizes. They're just scraps from somebody's wood shop. I don't know, you know, $10 or so for a pretty good sized bag, different shapes. This is Luan that I told you just now was kind of like paneling. And it really looks, it's laminate. It's got 3 little things of laminate where this one has 5. So this is a little better quality. Okay, surfaces. Anything absorbent. You have to have absorbent. You can't put it on glass or linoleum or anything like that. You can put it on paper. That's also something that people tell you never do. You can put it on paper because I just showed you a book where I did it. You can put it on watercolor paper. And then you take it and mount it to a piece of wood, or you mount it beforehand. But yeah, you can use paper. Depends on what you're going to use it for. It's not flexible, so you can't put it in something that it's going to wiggle and move, okay? You can use canvas. I told you in the product list, Dollar Tree has these little wrapped canvases now for $1 for a couple of panels. These little canvas things. And they're probably on, if they don't tell you what the core is, it's probably cardboard. But for most things and for mixed media work, this is great. It's absorbent enough. Let's see, what else? I went blank. Can't think why you need anything else. There's a product on the market called Encaustic Gesso. You don't need it. It's if you want to take a board like this for some reason and make it white. That's about the only reason, because you can't put acrylic on here. I like the natural color of the, and if I want it white, I'll use white encaustic. I don't want to add any steps to what's already going on. Stencils. Can you imagine a Patty Tolly Perry stencil? This isn't, but you warm your encaustic board is, it's not cold, hard. It's not that. It's also not soft. It's in between. It may still be warm, but it's solid. You take this, lay it down. You can put wax inside it. You can paint wax here and leave it for just a second or two for it to dry or set up. Pull this off and you've got a 3-dimensional pattern. You can take this, you can use pan pastels, and you can do those in the middle of it straight onto your wax. The wax loves pan pastels just like the jelly plate does. Rosemary, remember when we were playing with pan pastels and it sticks to the plate? That's what it does on the wax, because it's pretty close to just a raw powder. Does not hurt these. These do not melt. Now, a cheapy one from China, I'm not going to be responsible for. I think that's all I got on materials. If y'all got any questions? Move this out of here. Do. And again, I recommend that y'all buy the palette, the stuff already done. I'm going to see what this does. If y'all want to bail, of course, you know you can do that anytime you want. This goes up to 300 degrees, or maybe the ET. I'm gonna try in between the ET and the 300. And I'm going to get up and turn the overhead. Yep. Turn the fan off. Oh, there's another whole faction of encaustic people who do photography. And they'll use their photographs, mount them on a board, and put a thin coat of encaustic over them and get it smooth. Sure, you can do that. I was going to look up oil pastels. Oil pastels are another of those oxymorons like Genesis oil. What else? Things that are named for things we recognize, but they're not. Oil pastels falls into that realm because nobody really knows what they're made of. And I was going to look and see if I can find it. Watercolor will work if you can keep it from beating up. So if you take a Neil color or something like that and mark on it, that works. You can take oil sticks are different than oil pastels. I think it's immensely confusing. These are just oil mixed with solvent. Not solvent. Oil. They're raw pigment mixed with oil. I'll get it in a minute. These work great. This is an RNF stick, the encaustic. Oil pastels don't melt the same way. So I don't know for sure. I have used them, but I don't know. These are Neocolors, of course. You can write on a cured encaustic surface, and then you can encaustic thin coat on top of it and seal it, bond it, and it's fine. It's there. You can use Sumi ink, Sumi writing, India ink, papers, as long as they're not plastic coated, any kind of paper. Some papers disappear like they do with matte medium. We'll give this a few minutes and see what it does, just so y'all can see it. See, when these get worn out, I'll take a straw and tape it to the end of the handle so I can hold it out here for oil painting. It's kind of funny. That's funny. Let me find something to stir this with. The end of a paintbrush will work. And this had some, see, this is already melted. Now I'm going to take that out of there. Remember why? Because the smoking point on medium is lower than tomorrow. Debbie, this ought to be right up your alley for science. You could probably teach me a few things. Now we're just tomorrow. Well, I mean, you know, except what's in the plate. And see, that brush is already ready to use. Magicals, yeah. It would be an interesting experiment. I don't think I've ever tried those. I have. See, this is turning clear, and now I've got Demar on that. I didn't mean to. It won't matter though. I tried using Tattered Angel sprays, and all they do is kind of beat up, and when it gets heated, it kind of just looks yucky. But Magicals probably would hold their powdery look. I have one of those old hot plates like you see and people used to use in their hotel rooms or dorm rooms, those little circular electric. I got it at thrift store. I used it and an old cooking pan to do my Demar in. I don't know how you say it, but I think it's Demar. See how sticky it is? Just like getting sap on your hands at a tree. You can't get it off. I may smoke a little from what's left over in here. Kind of fun to play with. The first time I made this, I was so careful. I did it in the kitchen, and I started using a small mini crock pot. They don't get near hot enough. So then I got braver. I tried it outside once. Randy had something that was used to melt bullets or something. Now I just do it in my studio. It doesn't take very long. You can save about 30 to 40% off buying it already done. And some people like me are just nuts enough they like to try it. See? Hanging by a thread. So y'all go to my Pinterest page and look at some of that. Be prepared to be blown away. I have my encaustic paintings on a board on my Pinterest account. No. If you buy it pre-mixed, it's already melted together. And see, what I'll do here is when this gets a little bit melted, but please don't be scared of it because I screwed up. And I imagine you bought the pellets. That's what Arnav sells in that little bag. I usually keep some on hand. See how hard that is already. It's really pretty cool as a medium that you can. There's no waiting time. I'm just cleaning up these sticks that were left in this bucket. It's like playing with candle wax. But it peels right off. Yeah, but you know, if this was $40 or $50 a pound, which it has been, demand has got the price down. I think when I first started buying it, it was 30, and I could buy the materials and make it for 18 to 20. You know, it makes a difference. Now it's down to what, 25, Elaine? If y'all look around on the Pinterest boards and stuff and see anything, a technique or something that you want to see, let me know beforehand so I can get everything ready. Like, like I said, there's a million things. I haven't tried them all. Well, there's no need to do it, you know, unless you can't get it. I mean, I'm not sure how easy it is to get in Europe. Because the companies that started making it are here. Now, this is what I was talking about, the Damar. See, it's gooey, ooey gooey. Lord only knows what kind of process they put it through in a factory that uses it in minute amounts. Now, this is already mixed, so it'll just melt up. Woke everybody up in the neighborhood, I bet. But somebody that wants to will now be able to see it firsthand. And like I said, I usually keep some RNF pellets around. Come on, little bit. Melty, melty. So I hope I have dispelled some angry rumors. Not that any of them are happy, but you saw me fall off the cliff and make a mess. There are brushes from Encausticos that have, they're like So like this kind of a brush, and the bristles have a space, like there'll be a 1/4 inch bristles and then a space. And then of course by the time it gets down here, it's all brush. That's specifically made so that you can dry it and brush at the same time and the air can get down in between. I do not have one of those because they're like 30 bucks. Anything silicone works. You can get those silicone kitchen tools. And the ceiling fan's on, so it's cooling things down in here. Come on, melt out, and then we'll quit. Randy and I watched 3 movies last night. This makes a good little amount of, this melt pot holds a good amount for a session. And I probably won't fire up the big griddle. I mean, any more than I did today. Uh, 8-1, yes. Are you going to think about making it? Wendy, are you one of those? Like me? If I hadn't had my griddle plugged in, there would have been no problems. This would have been just easy peasy. Yeah, 8-1, and you don't have to be a chemist about the measurement. Because some people like 9-1, some people like 7-1, or 5-1. Well, when you buy it already pre-made, Wendy, you don't do this. This is for those who want to know the rest of the story. Buying it pre-done, easy peasy. I hope you come back though, because you may see some stuff that you like. I like the little book cover I did at Rosemary's. And by the same token, I was talking about telling you all the truth as I know it. If I tell you something that you think is wrong, I hope you let me know. Because I do not want to give out false information. I've been watching some more painting videos, portrait videos at night, kind of easing back into that. And it's like every other art form. It is amazing how many different techniques there are. And they're all valid. It's almost all melted. Okay. If y'all want to stick around for a few more minutes, I'm going to sit here and finish this. Yeah, so you'd be a good one to, if you wanted to do encaustic, and could get the raw materials, this is what you would do. I always forget that that's where you are. Like watching paint dry. Anybody that's watching out there have any questions, PM me anytime. Demar resin is what amber comes from. Amber jewelry. See all those little dark spots? That's dirt and bird wings and bugs. This is the stuff that gets a whole bug encased in it, and then it then oxidized. What does it do? Fossilize? Now I gotta put all this stuff back up in its little case. The stuff I won't be using. Where did you hear about it, encaustic, Elaine? I'm doing this up against the side where it might be a little hotter. My fan is messing me up. I've done research on Crayola before, and they really do use pretty good quality ingredients. This is a fun one to me. And it may not exactly be the Demar resin tree that does amber, but it's one of those similar. Now you see why you can't do anything with it on its own. Did Kathy leave? She had a time the other night, makes everybody understand that what she was doing was not encaustic. You can use encaustic in your journals. It smells so good. Some people get the idea that one medium is more exclusive than another, or that you can compare wax coating to encaustic and one's better than the other. It's not. They're just different. That's it. They're just different. Come on, Mel. If I was in a hurry, I could just take that out and throw it away. Or take it out and put it back in the bag for later. A lot of people like to strain their, after they get this point done, because there's an awful lot of dirt in the Damar. Strain it with a cheesecloth, get it all out. I don't worry about it because I noticed when you pour it into your cups, that stuff is heavier. I've already scraped it off of there. It's heavier and sinks to the bottom. So once you get your little thingies made, you can just scrape it off. Yeah, I've already cleaned the bottom of those. So I don't mess with straining. Instead, it's insult to injury. Using natural beeswax is cool too, like Beth had. But it really does have a lot of dirties in it, unless it's been filtered. Yep, the difference is Damar resin. I kind of think that just straight beeswax would cloud up more. And that's just thinking about it. I don't know that. Worm, anybody? Linda Wessel, if you have one of these things in your storage, of course you probably can't get to it. I'll get this down just a little bit and then quit. Easy peasy cleanup. Just leave it. I do have You might want to put papers or something underneath you, because sometimes it just kind of gets on your shoe and follows you around the house. I'm going to have, when we move out of here, if we ever do, I'm going to have to sit down on my butt with a heat gun and paper towels and clean this floor. Comes up real easy, but it's work. Yeah, you'll do just as fine with a um, candle burner. Is that what you've got, Elaine? Yeah, the one I posted was an Amazon seller that had $94 on this little thing. Somebody ought to make another one because it's really handy. Well, all I'm going to use the rest of the week will be this and the candle thing. I don't think I'll be doing anything I need the griddle for. We're getting there. Quit watching the stirred pot. And you got your cans, tuna cans, dog cat food cans. Even these things work really good if you, I don't know if they come in a smaller size. Now that is moose poop. Odors after I quit working with beeswax, virtually non-existent. If it is, it's just a little bit of a faint wax smell, beeswax smell, which I don't find that offensive at all. Unless you smoke it like I just did. Oh, cool. I think Crayolas will be just fine in small amounts. Again, like using an acrylic skin or something, you don't want to use so much that it keeps the encaustic from sticking. And I bet if you researched it, you'd find artists sell their stuff for big bucks of used crayons. I forgot there was one more thing you'll need. If you put a cup on one of your candle warmers, you'll need a clothespin or something to pick it up. And we will need a little bit of cooking oil from your kitchen. And that will be it, I think. Oh yeah, you can use that. That'd be great. That's what I use for these colors. Because I just wasn't going to spend money for what it would take to buy all these pigments in the blocks. We're just about there. I am thinking about getting rid of this because it's got some big old dirt chunks in it. Now Elaine, you're over Oak City way, right? Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Because it's got some big old, it looks like a big old booger. Okay, you are done. Get it off that brush before it dries on there. Okay, guys, I think that's all I got for today. With the additional entertainment, all of y'all that are watching, this is not an essential step. This is a, if you want to make your own step, this is a curiosity satisfier, because I know there are people who think about it and don't because they're scared of it. I recommend having ready-made pellets from R&F. They're so easy to use. You can buy it in a block, but it's just easier to have the pellets. You can use just what you want. Yeah, Elaine, aren't you over toward Oak City? Or is that it? Have I got you and Elaine mixed up? No, Eileen. I'll get it in a minute. Y'all's names mess me up. Wagner. Okay, that's what I thought. That's kind of close. See, Linda just lives a couple hours from here in Missouri. All right, apron off. That means it's time to quit. Y'all got anything else to say? Okay. I will. I think I'll go ahead and come back on tomorrow at 4 o'clock. That way Linda can stand a chance of being finished with work. And we'll go from there. At least spend the week on it. Bye, Wendy. I'm glad you came. I'll talk to you later. Bye.